Everything in my garden this summer has suffered from either the heat waves or the drought, except for this one plant that I have not watered the entire summer, and it actually seems to prefer not to be watered at all. And not only does this plant not need to be watered, it happens to be really high in protein and packed with tons of other nutrients too. So when I first heard about it, I kind of couldn't believe that more people weren't growing it. It's delicious, it's easy to grow, and you never have to water it. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how this bean is grown and harvest it, because it's finally that time of year. I was waiting all summer to talk to you guys about this because I really wanted to test it out before I told you how cool it was, so that hopefully this time next year you can be harvesting your own Tepary beans too. So we're going to get into the planting, the plant care, harvesting today. But first, I think we should talk a little bit more about what a Tepary bean is, because most people haven't even heard of it. So if you don't know if it's any good, why would you try growing it? So like I said, these Tepary beans are really high in a lot of things, including protein, calcium, and minerals. They also have a ton of potassium in them. In fact, they have more minerals than a lot of common beans like pinto beans and navy beans, and more protein too. They also have a really low glycemic index. So if that's a concern for you, if you're worried about your blood sugar, these are a really healthy bean that you can add to your diet. I typically don't grow a lot of dried beans in my garden. They're really easy to grow, and they have a lot of benefits where they're adding nutrients to your soil because they're nitrogen fixers. But when I grow beans, I find it to be really tedious to harvest them. So it has to be something that's really worthwhile for me to grow it. I've grown scarlet runner beans, I've grown black beans, I've grown Vermont cranberry beans. I've tried a bunch of different types, but this is the only one that I think I will grow again, because it has such that high nutritional content, and because with the way that climate change has been affecting our environment, it's so easy to grow. It was the only thing all summer that I did not stress over with all the kind of crazy temperature and weather issues we were having. Also contain more oils and essential amino acids like lysine, and they also have just a really good flavor. So you're getting all these benefits, and they taste really good too. They're kind of like nutty and earthy. Now, there's probably no reason why you would eat a shelling bean raw anyway, because a shelling bean is typically you wait until it's fully dried and hardened before you pick it off the vine, and you're probably not going to want to eat it at that stage. But just so you know, Tepary beans are not safe to eat raw. So we do need to cook them thoroughly before we eat them, because they have a lot of what's called anti-nutrients in them that kind of prevent the proper uptake of the minerals and vitamins and everything that's inside of the bean. So we do have to cook it thoroughly first. But that's really the only kind of thing that you need to keep in mind when you're growing Tepary beans. Of course, if you're trying any new food, you should be very mindful if you are prone to allergies and things like that. And I know this is probably a food that not very many of us have had a chance to try yet. So do keep that in mind as well. But as long as you've cooked it thoroughly, you should be totally fine. So these are what my beans look like right now. We're going to get into harvesting them. Obviously, once a shelling bean reaches this kind of dried out crunchy stage, it's not very pretty anymore. It made these beautiful kind of delicate little flowers. And it also kind of has like a vining tendency depending on the variety. So Tepary beans come in a ton of different colors, like every color you can think of. And I'm pretty sure these ones are black, but we're going to find out. And when I planted them, I didn't trellis them at all, because I had read that most varieties are not vining. Well, it seems like most varieties are semi-vining. So these plants around them, like my basil and my eggplant, every once in a while I'd see a little tendril of a Tepary bean kind of climbing it, but it was gentle, like it wasn't like choking the plant or anything like that. And as far as planting goes, there's just a couple things you want to keep in mind. So because these are from a very desert arid climate, they prefer really loose sandy soil over a heavy clay soil. You probably won't have as much luck growing them in heavy clay soil. I know all you heavy clay soil gardeners are rolling your eyes, because this is a problem that you have with pretty much every plant. They also prefer full sun. Again, coming from these desert climates, these are really common plants in Arizona. So think like that, they really love that heat and they thrive in that heat. So of course I'm standing in the shade right now. It's fall, so this tree line kind of blocks a lot of the sun at this time of day, but they do get 6 to 8 hours of sun, and they did thrive. So full sun, well-drained soil, and we want to plant them about 1 inch deep and around 4 to 6 inches apart. I don't think I followed that spacing very well, and they seemed to do fine. I want to say mine were more 2 to 3 inches apart, and I really packed them in there, and they did just fine. They didn't mind at all. The way that Tepary beans account for the fact that they use less water is they actually grow really deep roots that are really small roots, but they're very deep. So I think because they went down more than out so much, maybe that's why they didn't like compete for the root space. But again, this is my first year growing these. It's still something that I'm learning more about. I would love to try to grow a few different varieties next year and see how they perform compared to the ones that I tried this year, which I will link down in the description if you want to grab some of your own. And then once they've sprouted, which again, I pretty much had like almost 100% germination rate on these, they just kind of minded their own business. You do need to keep them damp while they are sprouting. But after that point, they don't want anything to do with you. Like these plants thrived on my neglect, which was very convenient because I was very pregnant and not interested in worrying about something in the garden any more than I had to. The worst thing that you can do to a Tepary bean is water it too much after it's germinated. They thrive on being underwatered. If you water them a lot, you're gonna get less seed pods. The less you water them, the more seed pods you get. It's so counterintuitive. And again, this just comes back to like this idea of like, how did more people not know about these? And I have a couple conspiracy theories about this, one of which has to do with the fact that the lysine content in these is so high that it could be used in chemotherapy treatments. And I don't know, it just makes me wonder, like, if there's any possibility that this plant could have had some sort of healing property and that was a big part of why it's kind of fell out of popular use, or maybe it's just because it's such a prominent crop in Native American cultures, which are so actively being erased from our history. It's really just too bad. And that was a big reason why I wanted to make this video, was to raise awareness of how incredible and important this plant was, not just to us now, but historically and culturally to these Native American communities. So I don't really have a whole lot of care tips for you other than don't care about it at all. Just kind of let it do its thing and it's going to make more and more seed pods for you. Okay, so there's a good amount of plants over here. I'm not going to harvest them all at once right now because I do have to do a separate short video because these are just so delightfully crunchy, and I think that Instagram and TikTok deserve to hear all that lovely garden ASMR. But I'm actually just going to cut the whole plant off. You could take individual pods and that's fine too. But when you cut the whole plant off at the base, we can leave those roots in the ground. See how it's still attached to this basil plant? We can leave those roots in the ground, let them decompose and add more organic matter to my garden beds. And in the meantime, I'm going to pop these in my basket. Let's take one more and we can talk more about harvesting them. You can see they get really tangled up. Okay, and now I'm covered in plants. Yep. So when it comes to harvesting our Tepary beans, it's just like any other shelling bean where we want to make sure they're really brown and crispy on the plant. However, I did read that with Tepary beans in particular, the pods can shatter if you leave them too long. So it's a good idea to harvest these when about 75% of the pods are green and just kind of let the rest dry on the vine if you can. So, oh, they're so cute. They just kind of look like a flatter black bean. And again, these come in all different colors. If you aren't doing this for content, the most efficient way to harvest a whole bunch of them at once is to cut those vines back just like I did the whole vine, and then put them on like a tarp or a blanket or something. And at that point, you can let them really dry out and smash them with your feet or some kind of spatula. It doesn't matter. Having grown like traditional black beans, for example, in comparison, I find these a lot faster and easier to harvest. The pods are really thin and delicate. And like I said, they will shatter if you let them get dry enough. So it's a lot easier to harvest these compared to other dried beans that you might get, a shelling bean. And honestly, it's just kind of fun and exciting to grow something that's so well adapted to the challenges that we're facing now. Considering all the other issues that I had in the garden this year, it's just been really exciting to grow something that needed so little help from me on my part. So I hope that you will give Tepary beans a try in your garden. Let me know if you will, because I don't know if this sounds appealing to other people or not. I feel like a lot of us are looking for things that are more drought tolerant. So hopefully this will appeal to you and this video was helpful in helping you figure out how to plant Tepary beans in your own garden. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.